I'm going to tell you about 10 features of the game design of Wonders of the First that make it different from any other CCG. Wonders has a fixed 7-round game length. This is nice because you know you're going to have 7 rounds to pull off your plan of your deck. And in other games, sometimes games can end too soon or stretch on too long. This one's much more predictable. And it kind of shows that people like to have time to put their plan together. This is why formats like Commander have sort of artificially extended game length so that people will have time to put out their 7 and 8 drop cards. That's great. But there's certain strategies that kind of depend on an early win. So aggro strategies want to win on turn 3 or 4 and then fall apart after that, or early combo strategies. And we had to adapt the game for that. That's one of the reasons why when you capture stones, they generate energy for you. That's breaking conventional wisdom. Most game design teams will tell you that your victory condition should not generate extra resources because it will have a snowball effect. If you get ahead early, then it's hard to catch up to that person who took the early lead. But in this game, when you can kind of turtle up and bide your time until the right time to do a big comeback, it's quite balanced. There's kind of a lesson that a lot of CCG tuning teams end up learning when they are balancing the different strategies, and it's kind of intuitive to think that the power of the offensive cards and the power of the defensive cards should be somewhat similar in strength, but what happens is that if they're evenly matched, then a certain amount of games end up being highly defensive. The action grinds to a halt, and the second half of the game, nothing happens or it goes on too long. So you have to tune up your aggro. Your offense in general should be substantially better than the defensive cards in terms of power level, so that there's always action, always motion, always dynamic things happening to upset the stasis of the game board. Wonders has 7 realms in which battles can take place. And in the first round, only 1 is open. And then a new one opens with each round until there's 7 realms open. Over the 7 rounds, you can play anywhere you want in any of them. And so you have like this increasing freedom to play and make decisions over the course of the game. But there's a skill to getting your opponent to play where you want them to play. If you take a stone early and you've got them thinking or getting mad about how they're going to take it back, then as the next realm opens, there's a stone free and available there, but they are playing to get the previous realm, the previous stone that you already took. They're trying to get it back. So we've seen games happen where players spend the whole game fighting over the first 2 stones when there's 5 stones sitting out there available for anyone to take. But there's a kind of sunk cost fallacy that neither one wants to give up on those 2 battles that they've put so many cards and so much energy into trying to get. So the skill is, can you make them play where you want them to play? The next feature is the action economy. We have 2 resources that players get every round. Energy, which is the sort of familiar way to pay for costs of cards from your hand. And then we have actions, which you can use to play a card, activate a card on the board, attack, or draw a card. And having 2 resources like that provides a nice resource management challenge as you try to execute your plan on across the board. But it also provides a nice balancing feature because we do have some crazy combos and some endless loops, but in general, when you run out of actions, you can't use them anymore. And so they have a finite endpoint. They won't allow a super easy combo wins on the spot. And because of that, we can push the boundaries a little bit of the kinds of cards that we can release. They have this limiting balancing factor in most cases, so we can do crazier, more exciting cards than you would otherwise be able to do in a CCG. The next feature is build points and deck ratings. Every card has a build point value that is not on the card, it's maintained in the card database, and we adjust it and tune it every now and then depending on that card's impact in the metagame. So you can take your deck, add up the point value of all of the cards in your deck, and you get a deck rating. Now you can use that for tabletop matchmaking. And what this does is it fundamentally reframes the problem of overpowered cards as a matchmaking problem. So you no longer have this problem of a new player who has to come in and drop $1,000 to have a competitive deck, because that new player can come, build a 200-point deck, and find another player who also has a 200-point deck that is more or less fair, more or less evenly matched. And if it's not fair and not evenly matched, after a while, we'll be able to rebalance those cards so that they do become more fair and evenly matched. As game designers, we don't often talk about the pack ripping experience, not as much as we should, but depending on the game that you're looking at, there are just as many videos out there about opening packs as there are about actual games being played. So people love opening packs, and they love doing it with friends. Now that we have this build point system, you can open a pack, look at the total points across all of the cards that you opened. If you get some serialized cards or some other special cards, you can have a multiplier, and now you can have a quantifiable score on the pack that you just opened. Try to beat your friend's high score. Something players love doing it. Now we're going to put a number on it so you can actually tell who won. One thing that I learned from working on mass market games is that if you want to put a giant roadblock in the middle of the game, you give players a huge complex decision with many options. If you want to keep momentum and action moving forward in the game, you make sure that each decision has a manageable amount of options, and lots of those small decisions happen in a row. And that's what we're going for. We want decisions in general to be 3, 4, a reasonable number of options instead of 10, 12 different things you could do. So how do we do that with our game? We remove some decisions about resources. We have automatic resource generation. We have a game state, a board where you can easily see where you're winning and losing, so you can easily plan out where you're going to attack, where you're going to play next. Usually it only kind of makes sense to try to win in 2 or 3 places in any given board situation. And we have a board state that moves from simple to complex, but you follow that complexity every step of the way, and so it's quite easy to track in your head where everything is, what it's doing, why it's there. We also have a very straightforward, I do one thing on my turn, you do one thing on your turn, back and forth, no waiting for the other person to respond to see if you can actually complete the action that you started. It has a lot of gameplay depth, but nice, clean, action-oriented forward momentum rules. We also did a lot of work on the card set to make sure that card abilities themselves were not slowing down gameplay, and we're keeping things interesting. We're quite low on deck searching. We're quite low on modal cards, where it's not always clear which ability of the card that you want to use at which time. We want to keep those decisions elegant, clean, moving forward at a lively pace. Wonders has a high efficiency rules engine. We create more gameplay with less rules infrastructure than any other CCG that I know of. A lot of times in a CCG, the rules get very bloated because the more base rules you have, the more cards you can make that break them, and the more card design space you get. So there's an incentive to have a lot of complicated turn steps. We have a game where we prefer to break the rules of the card layout that you see in front of you. That lets us have more simple, more elegant rules with fewer decisions and keep that decision momentum moving forward. Now we come to one of my favorite topics, which is low character counts in rules text of cards. So when Magic Beta came out, it was an average of about 18 words in a text box per card. When I was leading Magic design teams, I constantly had to rein in my designers not to put in so many abilities on cards. But it's very easy, it's very tempting to just load up more and more abilities. It's lazy and it's inelegant. And you may have heard that when everyone's super, no one will be. So today, I believe Magic Rules text is about over 30 words per card on average. And Wonders of the First is coming in at 15 words per card on average. We're going to try and see if we can get it even lower. This is something I press for on every design team that I'm ever a part of. Pick the right abilities, make them elegant, make them needed and a reason to be on that card, instead of putting card advantage and a big beater and evasion and protection all on the same card. No, that is the player's job to figure out how to do that. The designer's job is to give them the tools and the pieces they need to put those together. Now we come to one of my favorite parts of the game, which is the huge art. All of our art is 2 to 3 aspect ratio. It takes up the entire space of the card face. How can we do this when other cards generally don't do it? It's because we have that low character count in our rules text, which gets out of the way of enjoying all of that art. That low character count comes from our high efficiency rules engine. So when we started having efficient, well-designed, clean rules, elegantly designed card abilities, and low character count, that unlocks the ability to do big, beautiful, bold cards. You can recognize them way across the table. They catch your eye when you walk into a game store and you see them down there. I love that about this game. Our next feature is nested set design. We have a huge set with a pauper style format built into the game, like a game within a game. Our commons, uncommons, and rares, that's our 3 lowest rarity tiers, are 90% the size of the original Magic beta set. Our commons alone are 90% the size of the original Pokemon base set. So that means that when you play this game, you can opt to play the high collectibility version or the low collectibility version and have a great experience that holds up with the best CCGs in the marketplace. How do we do this? We deliberately made sure that strategic options and build-arounds, everything that you need for a good variety of gameplay, resource ramp, aggro, control, removal, tribal build-arounds were all available at those lower rarity tiers. You'll see them immediately when you open a few booster packs. And if you end up getting some epics and mythics and you want to play the version that's low collectability, you can trade those away for the automatic pauper style format included in every booster. That covers my 10 features of Wonders of the First game design. There's a lot more features I can talk about, but we'll save them for another time. I also want to say that I love collectible games, trading card games of all kinds. When I criticize Magic or other games, please take that in the positive light that it's meant for. I want to make positive changes in the industry. I want to solve some of these problems. Our whole design team does, and it's incredibly exciting to get to build a game from the ground up that looks like it is taking on some of these problems successfully. It is finding innovative solutions. It's been proven out quite a bit in our playtesting already, and it's exciting to see what's going to happen next. Bye.